This is Emory Mulling, and welcome to our webinar today on COVID-19 has changed your employees, and all of us are certainly aware of that. This is the first of a four-part series. Today we're talking about the personal side. Next week, same time, next Thursday, we'll be talking about the professional side. But thank you very much for joining us today. Now, you may not know about Mulling HR, so I'd like to just briefly tell you a little bit about us. We provide over 21 million small businesses as well as medium-sized businesses a disruptive way to provide the same HR services that the Fortune 500 companies can afford, and without the cost of staffing up a full-time HR department. We did market surveys on this, and if there's one thing we heard was on demand in real time. Small companies don't have the resources and don't want to take the time to do all of the research. So we provide affordable and senior level HR consultants who have all been vice presidents or director level in their area of expertise. We have former generalists, but then we have experts as well. And the next slide. Next slide. Then the next slide, we're sorry for the technical difficulties. May I see the previous slide? We have been in business for over 35 years, and we have assisted hundreds of domestic and international businesses to help them become more profitable and productive. We're very proud that we have worked with over 60 Fortune 500 companies, such as Delta, Ritz-Carlton, Intercontinental Hotel. But we've also worked with hundreds of medium and small size companies. We're very proud that we have been named by the Atlanta Business Chronicle as an A+ employer, the #1 business, best place to work in Atlanta. There have been 3 defining moments in the recent history of the United States. I thought it would be interesting for us to quickly go over World War II, some effects, and then 9/11, and now we're right in the middle of one of the biggest defining moments that will have major changes in the U.S. population. Now let's talk quickly about World War II. Some people don't realize that there were over 450,000 war casualties. Think about the number of families and friends that were personally affected, but then there was a long economic recovery to overcome because of the devastation that World War II had done. And then the baby boomer generation started, and it has changed the US demographics for decades, and we are still changing it because of elder care, retiring, what do they want to do? And what is important is a lot of the returning soldiers took back jobs that women had been performing while the soldiers were overseas fighting the war, and that the women returned to being homemakers or whatever. Now let's talk about 9/11. All of us remember where we were at the exact moment when the first plane hit the first tower, and there was a national mourning for the largest attack on U.S. soil since Pearl Harbor, over 3,000 deaths. And what is important, in my opinion, of 9/11 is the reality of international terrorism affecting our daily lives set in. We now were in danger in our own country. It wasn't just happening in Afghanistan. Next slide. Now we're in the middle, or the beginning, of COVID-19. Largest pandemic since the Black Plague, and that was a huge one. But it is affecting more aspects of people and families than ever in our history, because there's much more communication, news, and awareness. And it is estimated that there will be more than 100,000 deaths in the US alone. And then the most recent figure I read was over 5 million cases worldwide. And this has had changes at home and work, resulting in major changes in the US population. That's what we will be talking about today. One important thing is it has changed the international relations in the world for a long time. I don't want to get political, but we all are aware of the changes and the implications and the pointing of fingers of China and taking sides and the political turmoil that it is taking place in America. And then it's the worst financial fear threat in the US economy. Some people, doomsayers, will think that we could go into a depression. And what's important, interesting to me, is the US and world changed in 3 days. Now, let's talk about, this is what we're going to be talking about today, the personal changes in the US employees and families. We cannot forget the families. There has been reported there's an increase in mental health issues in the US population, an increase in suicide, an increase in sickness. We will discuss this and some actions you can take to counter that. Changes in healthy habits within the family, with all of us being sequestered, now loosening up. I know I have gained 10 pounds. People were saying the COVID-19 10 pounds. Now they're saying the COVID-19 15 pounds. Hopefully I don't go there. There are serious educational concerns for children and grandchildren in high school. And then we will also talk about the effects on the college students. And we cannot have a presentation without talking about changes in our spiritualities. 88% of Americans claim to have some form of spirituality. We will be discussing that. And there's more concerns for discrimination of women. I did some research on this, and I'm going to give you some very interesting facts about how working virtually and other items could very much increase the discrimination of women in the workplace. Major financial concerns for small businesses. I've been a small business owner for 36 years. I certainly understand that, and we'll be discussing that. And then the effects on family life. There's some real interesting tangents of that. Now let's talk about the effects on our personal lives. There's obviously been financial stress. Before the government announced that some people would be receiving, in addition to unemployment insurance, $600, and people have been afraid that they would be evicted from their apartments or lose their homes, maybe 2 months behind. I know there are government guidelines on that, maybe having some leniencies. There's nothing like financial stress to affect our personal lives. And mental health professionals are reporting an increase in depression and specifically antidepressant prescriptions. And we've already mentioned that there is predicted to be a 70% increase in suicides. We know about increasing suicides around the holiday time. In recession, this is turning out to be worse than the most recent recession, which was the worst recession since the Depression. And then many individuals are actually not receiving needed diagnostics. They're afraid to go to the doctor's offices or emergency rooms, although our healthcare professionals are doing a great job in trying to control that. But then there is surgeries that have been postponed. There's worsening conditions. They are now loosening up on that. And then there is employee assistance programs are reporting an increase in use. The employee assistance programs can give you on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis how many people are calling in and the type of concerns. Now, if you don't have an employee assistance program, we're going to discuss at the end of the presentation how you can help in that area. I'd like to mention that if you have questions now throughout the presentation, please write your questions and send them in throughout the presentations. We're going to allow 10 minutes or more at the end of this webinar to answer as many questions as we can. At the bottom of the screen is where you will be able to send in the questions. But back to the slide that we're looking at now. Cancellation of family weddings and burial delays. This is having a huge effect. And we have friends of our families that they had to cancel that wedding. And that's one of the biggest days of your life. And I have seen personally what effect it has had on that couple. And I want to share a very sad situation. A friend of ours, very good friend of my wife, has master's, advanced degrees in nursing, has taught nursing, and she was allowed to go in because she's a nurse and could wear protective clothing. She visited her close to 90-year-old mother in a nursing home and was there when she passed away on Easter Day. Well, the roommate was diagnosed with the virus. So she had lost her mother. The husband had to go live with his daughter for 2 weeks. She was in quarantine for 14 days, totally alone, not able to see anybody, not help her go through the mourning process. And that is horrible. A friend of mine lost her father Monday and wanted them to at least have a family private viewing. They said no. He died in New York, and they're not allowing that. They're immediately cremating. So that's just the tip of the iceberg of the effects on personal lives. Now let's talk about the decline in healthy habits. I've already mentioned that I have gained my 11 pounds. I'm not bringing unhealthy food in the house because it's an emergency situation with me. I used to work out before the pandemic 3 times a week. Well, the fitness centers are now closed, opening back now. But when you immediately stop, it has an effect on your body. And remember, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was an initial fear of outdoor exercise, walking. You couldn't go outside your house. People are now doing that. But then there's change in eating habits. People are not eating on a regular basis. Some people are stress eaters. That is having an effect. Now, I want you to think about the next one. It is reported that 200 to 250% increase in alcohol sales. Now, we may not know this about some of our employees, but some are alcoholics and they hide it pretty well, or they're on the verge of being an alcoholic or a drug abuser or whatever. Well, they're alone at home or isolated with a family. Somebody is drinking more with 250% increase in alcohol sales. And the people who go to AA or support groups, they're doing it by Zoom, but that is not the same in talking face to face. So there's a increase in alcohol consumption, and it can lead to clinical depression or alcoholism. And we need to be very aware of that when our employees are returning to work. There are different sleeping habits. I think it's interesting that the nighttime late hour viewership in TV has gone up, and the morning programs are having much less viewership. Professionals will tell you, medical professional, it is important to have the same sleeping habits, have a regular schedule. And I know it has affected my life and others too. So when your employees return to work, the rope is going to be tightened. Now they're back and on a different schedule. Now think about the effects of vacation and other personal and business events canceled. You are rescheduling, you're pushing back situations, and you can expect personal day issues later. They need to be off. They've got to handle situations. They've got to have more doctor's appointments. This is going to affect small businesses, particularly on productivity and availability of work. So the decline in health habits is a serious situation. Now let's look at educational concerns. Those of us who have gone to college know that college students learn in classrooms, but college life is teaching you and preparing you for future work and marriage and all of the above. Well, college students now are missing college life. They have returned home. And all of us who have college graduates as children, they go away to college and immediately become more of an adult. When they come home at the holidays or visit for the weekend, they're changed. Now you have these college students at home for 2, 3, 4 months. That is definitely creating some educational concerns, or because are they learning as much? Now let's talk about high school students preparing less for post-high school education. Your 10th and 11th grade students, their responsibility is to get ready for college. Most high school students apply and are accepted early in their senior year, so that's the reason I'm talking about 10th and 11th grade students. So that is affecting and having concerns of parents. Now, let's talk about early childhood education, learning virtually. My wife and I have a 4-year-old in a school, and they are doing a great job, but keeping the attention and educating 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds virtually is very different than having chemistry, history, and English classes in high school. So a lot of families are now concerned, are their formative education years being negative affected, and you worry about that. Now, families are missing major life experiences as high school and college graduation, proms, and class trips. If we will all think back how important it was to us to finally graduate from high school, have our friends and families over and celebrate it and give positive reinforcement to the students, and you can say the same thing for college graduation. I think it is very sad that the students who wanted to go to proms and have dates and have a very formal event in their life, some people that is the most formal event so far in their life, they're not having that. That affects educational concerns. Now let's talk about spirituality. And I know in polite company, you're not supposed to talk about religion and politics, but as I said earlier, there's some real concerns here. 88% of the U.S. population report that they are religious in some form of denomination or belief. Now, we've closed churches, synagogues, mosques, and that has negative effect on those who have spirituality in their life. There is some need for human interaction. You cannot attend Sunday school, you cannot attend church. And those of us who are spiritual, that is a part of the spirituality. My wife and I are now watching our church service stream live on Sunday morning, and we're having our Sunday school class by Zoom. I will never forget the first time we did this, the Sunday school class 3 weeks ago. A woman who is a widow, lives by herself, and said, I am really lonely. It is great to see all of you. We had the pictures of the participants up on the screen, and that really hit me. People benefit from community involvement, volunteering in the church. It gives them commitment and positive reinforcement. And think about this, there's going to be a negative effect of the growth of religious organizations and fundraising. When you close down a church, you don't get as many new members, and the fundraising it's been reported is really down for the religious organizations, and they're just like businesses. They have budgets, they need revenue to run. So, and like I mentioned earlier, there's support in our religious organizations of the grieving process for the loss of family members and friends. We don't have that now. And then there is the visitation of the sick and dying. I was in the hospital a while back for 4 days on the first time I'd ever been in the hospital with pneumonia. Well, the church representative came by and visited my wife and me, and it was most beneficial. Unfortunately, now people are dying by themselves, and you've seen on television, the family members are looking through the window outside the building, and they are that is the only association they have. So spirituality is going to be affected. Now let's talk about increase in family abuse. I read an interesting article last week, and I really had not thought of this. Primarily, females are abused in the family or by significant others. They can no longer easily seek help and protection. If they want to call 911, the abuser is standing there over them or in the same house. They can grab the phone of the abused, and they can look and see who they have tried to call, a woman's shelter or 911, and you can imagine the effect of that, of the abuser abusing the significant other. And what is really tragic, women's shelters have fewer beds now due to the effect of social distancing. So if they can get to, excuse me, a woman's shelter, most of the time they're already full. And then let's talk about less child care for the children during the COVID-19. There are less spaces in child care, just like women's care and abused women, because of social distancing. Most of them are closed. They are opening up. Your employees are going to come back to work. They're going to be requesting more virtual employment, and because they can't get their children in a child care. And then there are sick child care centers, children with temperatures. They are not going to admit a child who has either been exposed or suspected of having the virus. And then on family life, the stress, creating stress, is there's less social interaction for children and youth. And think how important that is for teenagers, peer pressure, good peer pressure. And then on little children, that is how they learn how to get ready for middle and upper school. So in the bottom line on family life, people are living with more uncertainty. They have fear. I know I and my family have had concerns about certain things. So when you're going to have employees returning, having a different family life, and at the end of the, close to the end of the presentation, we're going to give you tips on how to handle that. Now let's talk about cumulative effects of your changing employees when they're coming back to work. You do not separate work life and family life. That is the reason employees who can afford it have employee assistance programs, because they realize that when there is stress, fear, abuse, alcoholism, all that we've talked about, it negatively affects the workplace and individual performance. Now, let's talk about retiring employees who really wanted to retire. And now some of their savings have been spent out of necessity because they're not getting Social Security or retirement pension plans. And some people are going to be forced to retire because companies cannot afford to pay them anymore. And that is going to create some real problems with the older employees. And then the older employees, if they have to leave or stressed out, they're going to be talking to your current employees at work. Now, this, when you really think about that, some of your employees have been in food lines for the first time. That is very humiliating. They're ashamed. They are not able to buy basic necessities for their family, such as food. We have all seen the lines at the schools giving out lunches, 2 meals a day, to families because that is what they depended on to feed their children. That is going to have a huge effect on your employees. Some employees have never felt humiliation, fear of losing homes and appointments and health care for families, and just be very aware and sensitive to your
Hey there, Ashley. How are you?
employees. They will be preoccupied.
Fine, thank you.
And,
I just wanted to add.
and maybe there will be, they will be depressed, stressed out. We've already mentioned the increase in suicide. And one of the biggest issues is, are you going to be able to offer and guarantee in the employee's mind a workplace that is safe? And if they can't, if they don't believe you, they are not going to want to come back to work, which is another whole issue. And we're going to be talking about that, of the effect on the workplace, next week. Are they refusing to work? Can you terminate them? Should you terminate them? What should you do? Now, a lot of employees have been sitting at home wondering about what kind of career they want. They have time to talk it over with their employees, and a lot of people, 95% of people, don't have an effective personal career plan. I give speeches on this. And at Mulling Corporation, we provide career transition, executive coaching, conflict resolution. Well, in career transition, we are very painfully aware of most people have not spent enough time deciding on their long-term career plans. And it's reported by Harris. They do, the Harris poll does an annual survey. They've done it for years. 70% of employees, and what's interesting, this percentage has not changed a lot through the decades. But think about this: when your employees are returning, 70% of your employees, if it's typical of other workplaces nationwide, are not happy with their job. Now this, I said Harris, I'm sorry, it's my mistake. It's a Gallup poll. Now they're going, those people who have been hunkered down and have had time to think about what they want to do since being at work. Many will want to find work elsewhere that better meets their goals. I am predicting that turnover is going to go up. it may not be immediate because a lot of people are there because they have to be there. And you need to ask, well, what kind of productivity are you getting out of those employees who are stressed and preoccupied? And you realize it is now predicted that as many, and this is hard to believe, as many as 20 or 30% more employees are going to want to work virtually than before the pandemic. That is a paradigm shift in the American workforce. And they're going to put, the returning employees are going to put more pressure to work virtually, part-time or full-time. And the company needs new working rules and management skills to deal with this. Mulling Corporation has developed some really good plans on this. All of our senior level consultants have been dealing with this through the decades. Now it's more than critical than ever before. So if you have any questions about that, please call us. Just think about 20%. Let's be conservative. 20% more of your employees wanting to work virtual. What effect that will have at your office. And you've got to train supervisors how to manage virtual employees who have never managed that before, and it is different. There's going to be needed motivators. You're going to have tighter goals, deadlines. You're going to have a much more different form of employee supervisor communication. So that will definitely change in many ways. Now, let's talk about suggested assistance from your employees. We've talked about the many things that are different. And when you look at all this at one time in about 30 minutes, it's scary. It is important that you train and request your frontline supervisors to have one-on-one meetings with your employees. I'm a former SVP of HR, and we in senior management a lot of times think that we're the most important in the company. We're not. In my opinion, it is the frontline supervisor who has more contact on a daily basis than any other management type person in the company. So they've got to talk one-on-one. They've got to be sensitive to these needs. I would suggest that you let your supervisors hear this, or if you have any questions, please give us a call at Mulling HR. And have town hall meetings, not only with your management, but with your employees, and listen to their concerns. Because when you do that, you are letting all employees know that you have concern. And that's what these stressed out employees are needing and wanting. Now, you need to ensure you have reviewed any compensation policy changes to fit the new workplace and job expectations. Some people have not been being paid. Now, if you need to cut pay, that is exacerbating a huge problem. We have compensation experts who can help you on this, and it needs to be done on an individual basis. If, unfortunately, and I'm a business owner, I understand the pressures of reduced revenue, or not maybe having to reduce pay for your employees. You've got to be able to use communication better than ever before, and that goes back to the first bullet, one-on-one communication. You have to have a plan for addressing the new needs, such as child care. And in the next slide or two, I'll give you some information on that. And you need to ensure that other new policies are communicated. Don't change policies and not instruct or educate your employees to do this. Communication is critical. Now, 95% of small businesses have never had a disaster plan, and they were caught unprepared when the world changed in 3 days. And so if you don't have a disaster plan, please give us a call. We can give you help on that. Now let's talk about a relapse. If we think we didn't do things correctly or had challenges when the world changed in 3 days, if we have a relapse, now that is going to be a much more exacerbated issues, and it's going to be worse if we have one, and let's hope we don't. So you need to benefit from our key learnings at Mulling HR, at your key learnings, but having a disaster plan is critical. And if you don't have one, please give us a call and ask us questions. Now, let's talk about the changes in employee and families again. If you do not have an employee assistance plan, and a lot of small companies don't, I understand that. But if you do, make very sure that you're communicating with your employees that they can consult with the mental health professionals in the employee assistance program. And if you don't, one solution is to invite your employees to have roundtable discussions on healthy habits, discrimination in the workplace, and status of family life today. I want you to think about the increase of discrimination on females in the workplace. You have females who are presenting themselves at work very professionally, they're dressing professionally, they're acting professional. And then they are now forced to work at home virtually. Well, the 7-year-old, the 3-year-old comes up to mommy and wants to talk. They can't control that age child, or the upset teenager, and that is on Zoom. That is very much changing the perception of that professional woman at work. And I'm very pro-female in the workplace. And we have proven that through the years. And unfortunately, there are double standards sometimes by some people in the workplace, and that will create some real problems with females. Now let's talk about financial and personal stress. I would encourage you to get a friend to come in who is a qualified financial advisor to have an employee roundtable. Post it and let's talk about it. And then if they don't want to talk about specifics of their finances, make that person available. There are some hourly employees, lower level income employees who may not have ever had a financial advisor. That will relieve a lot of stress. You can also invite medical professionals to an employee roundtable, talk about healthy habits. The next one's talking about physical fitness professional coming in, how they can exercise at home if they do not belong to a workout center or cannot afford one. And then I think it's important to invite high school and elementary educators, because there are different needs at different levels, to discuss the effects, both positive and negative, of virtual learning. You've got to get professionals in for two reasons. So show that you are concerned, you're giving professional advice, and you're trying to help them. That's important. Now, let's talk about family abuse. For those companies who are large enough to be required to have a sexual harassment program where you post on in the company, where you have your other posters of the person to contact if a male or female thinks that they're being sexually harassed. You can do the same thing with abuse. It's very personal. People are embarrassed about it. They will wear long sleeves or high necklines if they have bruises. We recommend that you post a notice in the workplace designating the individual to be contacted for a confidential, underlying confidential discussion on family abuse. And then you can refer them. It's good for you, the company, to know in advance who they can refer to a mental health professional or see if they can get protection for the abused and the children. It can be devastating. I heard over the news, you may have two weeks ago, police were called to a house for family abuse violence. They did not arrest the man. That afternoon, he killed the wife, strangled. So effects on family life. I would recommend we at Mulling HR that you develop a list of elder care and child care businesses in the zip codes. You can pull up all of this on Google and have it available in advance. Pass it out and communicate it when the employees are returning. Give it to your employees because they may say they can't come to work because they can't get into any other kind of child care facility. So give them assistance, appear to be giving them quality assistance. Next slide, please. Let's talk about supervisory training. I've already mentioned that. You need to train your supervisors on the need of sensitivity, and I want to add in listening skills. A lot of frontline supervisors may not be as sensitive and have as good listening skills as they need to have. This is now quadruple, the need has. So you're not only asking your supervisors to continue work, productivity, increase profit, have lower turnover. The way they've got to do that is to become much better supervisors, and we cannot expect our supervisors to become so much better because of the need. We are excellent at providing supervisory training. We provide executive coaching, roundtable. Please invite us in and let us help you in that area. And remind supervisors they're not therapists. That is where you can get in some legal issues. Our goal here is to consult with you when needed, and if you invite us in, to avoid legal liabilities, spending a lot of money on fines, government regulations. And you need to designate a member of management for supervisors to report any employee needs. We've already said post an announcement where you go and talk confidentially if you're having physical abuse. Well, you need to have the supervisors have the ability to know who to talk to, because think about this, they're going to be asked to deal with problems they've never had to deal with before. And some supervisors may say, this is not my problem. Well, it is our problem as employers to help our employees in a situation we have never experienced before. Supervisory management, the definition has changed, and give us a call and let us help you on that. Now, get some help. Avoid litigation, avoid legal fines. And it's really imperative that you have another layer of help, and I'm obviously biased, but Mulling HR to help you navigate through all of this sundry of COVID-19 problems and in the new world. We can help you think through the issues to minimize your legal exposure, keep your team motivated, and remember, a lot of people are going to want to change jobs and careers. And you need to gain assurance that your decisions are well thought out with the best available information that there is out there. This will help you sleep better. It will show to your employees, and this is critical, and potentially any courts or government agencies, EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunities, wage and hour complaints, that you cared and that you as a small business did the best job you could do. So give us a call at this number. We're here to help. We're good at it. And remember, all of our consultants have held senior level HR, vice president, and director level positions. Now, next slide. Our next webinar, we have 4 coming, 3 more. They're all on Thursday, so next Thursday at 11 a.m., all the same day of the week, same time. Today, we have talked about the personal side. We're going to give you just as many challenges and complications and suggestions to help on the professional side. Compensation, productivity, supervisory training. There is a lot to consider on the professional side, of course, affected by the personal challenges. Next slide. So questions. Give us some, if you have any questions, let us know, and we will be glad to answer them any way we can.
Okay, Emory.
Yes.
You have, I have 2 questions for you. If you check your phone, I actually sent a partial answer to one of those questions too, so you can read that. I have the question posted there, which I'm going to read in a second, so everybody can hear that. And then a partial answer is there as well that Jeff helped craft. So the first question we have is, I would very much like to hear your advice on handling safety concerns employees have when coming back to work, which has included them wanting to police other employees' personal lives and only allow trustworthy staff to begin working in the building again. So that's the first question.
Okay. And I like the input that one of our senior level HR professionals with over 30, 35 years of experience in management HR has given. You need to establish safety criteria of a safe workplace, and there as many as 30 to 50 bullets that the CDC and the government has come up with. But you've got to ensure that they are administered. And most companies, and if you don't have one as a small business, you must have a complaint mechanism for employees to express their concerns about the workplace. It is better, in my opinion and in Jeff's opinion, to be able to go to a representative management rather than confront a coworker, get into an argument right there in the middle of the workplace. So they need a complaint mechanism and to see if it is legitimate or not experienced. Now, and they've got to be able to trust this mechanism that takes all concerns seriously and appropriate action. Now, some people who want to spy on other employees and find out what they're doing, if they are actually being safe or if they're going to places, public places where there is virus and bringing it into the workplace, their management needs to explain to those employees that the company and they advise them not to get involved and spy on personal lives of people. There can be some legal action on that. There can be hard feelings. So it is important for the company, number one, to come up with the guidelines, regulations, and have a reporting mechanism to report if somebody is not social distancing, if they hear them say something that they went somewhere and I think I ran into someone with the virus. Communication is important, and it's important for your employees to know that you thought of this, you're trying your best to have a safe work environment.
Okay. Question number 2, if the person who sent that question in, if there's more to that question, because I can see that there could be some other things, please send that in to me and I'll get it to Emory. Second question is, Emory, you talked about a disaster plan and having one in advance. The relapse is one way a disaster could come again, but not knowing what the disaster can be, how can you help us develop a disaster plan for something we don't know what it is?
There are, for decades, there have been guidelines, and like I say, 95% of small companies don't have one, They didn't take the time. They didn't know they need to have one. But there are guidelines on writing disaster plans. How do you consider running the business, continuing the business, working from home? Who does what? And a lot of companies, not a lot, but some companies have experienced fire, and they have to know who to contact, how to continue the business, the insurance companies, all of that. But then COVID-19 has brought in a whole nother hemisphere. So we can help you on a standard disaster plan. That's the easy part. The now more complicated and difficult part is getting ready for a relapse if in fact we have one. We're specialists in this area, and we may not know the extent of the relapse, but we know how to get ready for one and help you with the unknowns. There are many generic and specific items that you need to consider in a regular disaster plan, but especially dealing with COVID-19. And these are a lot of help from the government has been made, but a lot of help from HR departments. We can help you in this area.
I've got one more question that's come in, Emory, and that's, what do you think is going to happen with employees wanting to be virtual employees versus in, see, what are they saying? In office employees?
This is going to be a problem. Some companies are going to be receptive to this because they're figuring out they don't have to have much real estate. They can have more productive employees. I've talked to several professionals, particularly HR people, and they're saying, Emory, I don't want to return to work. I'm being more productive. I don't have to get up and dress in the morning. I don't have to fight traffic. If 20 to 30% do this, it's going to be a paradigm change. So you need to be receptive to this. And the important thing is to know how to supervise these people. And I mentioned earlier in the presentation, close and more often deadlines. One solution we think is really good is once a week, if possible, that the virtual employee come in for a staff meeting face to face. It becomes the responsibility of the employee to make sure they communicate well enough with their boss and coworkers, but it is more important, almost more important, for your supervisors and management to know how to communicate more often and well enough with the now virtual employee. There are a lot of, we're learning, and the workplace, the U.S. business world would never have come to this, in my opinion, would never have come to the conclusion that we could have this many and effective virtual employees. They're being more productive in a lot of ways. So keep an open mind and let us help you or someone help you in teaching your supervisors how to manage these new employees.
Okay, that's all the questions we have right now, Emory. We want to thank everybody for joining us today. And we're offering a free 20-minute consultation today. If you're interested, call in at 800-674-8409, and we can get you started with whatever your issues are in the office, with reopening your office or whatever that Mulling HR can help with.
And I want to thank Joe and Jeff, who Joe's been two CEOs and worked for Fortune 500 companies. Jeff's sterling HR professional helping me on this content. Please join us next week where we will be talking about the professional side. And thank you for your questions and thank you for joining us today.